showing that he's serious about wanting to be an MMA fighter. And a lot of the backlash against Kimbo last year came from Elite XC pushing him as the top of fighters. They're pushing him as the face of MMA when he had 2-3 fights under his belt max, and it just wasn't the case. He just was not a professional mixed martial artist, really, and they were really face of it. So a lot of people had a backlash against that. Dana White said the only way he'd end up at the UFC is by going through the Ultimate Fighter. Kimbo took him up on it, and they had their best ratings for this show ever. I mean, the first 2 weeks of episodes surpassed every show that the Ultimate Fighter has ever had in terms of ratings. So that just tells you what Kimbo Slice brings along with Quentin Jackson and Rashad Evans as coaches. So getting him against one of the best fighters on this show, if he even loses tonight in this fight, even if he loses, if he looks good, he did more in this to establish himself as a legit fighter and to get more respect from fans and fighters everywhere than he did his entire time in Elite XC.
Yeah, I think he's just going to, given this opportunity, he's going to keep training with some of the best, and he'll probably just keep getting better and better if he can hold on before he gets too old.
Well, I mean, he's already, I believe, training with Greg Jackson's camp. I mean, they're helping him with his jiu-jitsu, and he's doing all sorts of other stuff. Rashad Evans wants to coach him. He took a different cut on him after watching him on this show, which makes me intrigued to see what Kimbo is bringing to the table here, and I'll actually watch this fight tonight.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Hey, Jamie, this is Jim. We're sitting in the studio tonight. We've got Tyron Woodley in here, fresh off his Strikeforce victory. Did you get a chance to see that?
Actually,
I did a report on it. Tyron, congratulations on that fight. You looked awesome, man.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks a lot.
yeah, I was just going to ask you, Jamie, I know that you covered the fight. What did you think in general, not just Tyron's fight, but in general, the whole Strikeforce event? What did it mean for Strikeforce, and how are they looking?
Well, I mean, the Challengers events are a great way to get guys like Tyron, who have only had a few fights under their belt. It's a chance to get them exposure on a higher level, getting on Showtime than they've been able to get before. And I love what they do with the Challengers events, and now they've got the CBS event coming up on November 7th. I'm really hoping that they can market that the way that they need to sell that Fedor Rogers fight, because they're going to come up against a new benchmark after this fight with Slice and Nelson tonight. I mean, if Dana White's expecting 6 million people for this on cable, I mean, Strikeforce is going to need to put up a good number with Brett Rogers and Fedor Emelianenko on November 7th on network TV, and they need to get their marketing out to sell that fight correctly. And but as far as the Challenger Series, I think they do a great job with that. I love seeing guys that you wouldn't see on the major shows otherwise, for the most part. I mean, there's a few guys that likely would get shots on the Showtime shows or the other events at some point. Like Tyron, you've just got a great skill set, obviously, that we've seen thus far. You're early in your career, but we've seen a lot of great things just in your fights that you've had thus far, that even without the Challengers fight, you're going to find your way onto a Showtime card at some point. But guys like him and with Tim Kennedy as well in the main event, the performance he put on against Zach Cummings was really, really impressive. So those guys are getting more exposure on a card like this so that they introduce themselves to the fans that are watching. So when Strikeforce brings them onto another Showtime card or onto CBS, there's a lot of guys that say, hey, I've seen him before, he looked really good. So it's a great building block and a great step to get up to the next level of competition.
So the big Strikeforce show with Fedor will be on CBS?
It's on CBS on November 7th. The only thing set for that card is the Brett Rogers Fedor Emelianenko fight. There's also talk that Jake Shields and Jason Mayhem Miller are going to fight on that for the Strikeforce middleweight title, because Kung Lee has relinquished his middleweight belt because he's off doing movies and doesn't want to leave that division completely out of the loop and without a champion. There's more on that. I did an interview with him last week, so that's up on MMAtorch.com. But he talked about just giving up his want to leave the guys hanging in that middleweight division, and so Jake Shields and Mayhem Miller will face off for that. Christiane Cyborg Santos was supposed to fight on that card, but it's not a guarantee that she will. She's had a shoulder injury that she's got to take care of, so she's not a guarantee for that November 7th card right now.
Is that Cyborg with the shoulder injury?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
What about Jacare? Are you talking about him fighting?
There's talk about it, but they don't have anything set yet, so I'm assuming that he'll make his debut, and along with Musazi, Gegard Musazi has said that he's expecting to fight in November, so whether it's the 7th or I believe they have a show later in the month that they're talking about as well, is putting together, so I'm not 100% sure on him, but because nothing's come out on those two as well, but I'm expecting that they'll both be a part of that CBS card, but we haven't gotten any names or official announcements on that yet.
Gotcha. Well, I was reading on the Torch today, it's starting to break out between Lesnar and Carwin. They're starting to talk about the match. Or about each other.
For a while. I mean, Carwin started it immediately after UFC 100. I mean, before he was even tapped for this fight, he started talking about Lesnar's post-fight speech and getting on him about that. And Lesnar finally shot back in an interview late last week talking about how Carwin, he really only thinks Carwin has a 1-0 record because he fought Gabriel Gonzaga and beat Gabe Gonzaga, but he hasn't fought anyone else. That was Lesnar's take, and the fact that Carwin's a D2 wrestler, Lesnar's a D1 wrestler, so they kind of had a bit going with that one, and then Carwin decided to respond back with even more words, talking about Brock Lesnar throwing temper tantrums. He said that they've been bringing in little kids to their training camp to deal with temper tantrums and irrationalities, and just basically taking jabs at Lesnar any shot he can, and doing the same old line of, you know, Lesnar was handed the shot, and Lesnar, I've had 3 times as many fights as Lesnar, and stuff like that. So they're going to keep talking until they fight on November 21st, and, you know, one of them is going to get shut up.
Yeah, I agree. I think Carwin's really got his work cut out for him with Lesnar. He's certainly got a puncher's chance, but you know, certainly a decent wrestler. But he's really going to have to come out to do it against Lesnar, I think.
Yeah, it's a tough fight to judge because Carwin hasn't gone past the 2.5-minute mark in any of his fights through 11 fights. He's an extremely hard puncher. He's got a great skill set with his hands and his wrestling background, but we haven't seen him tested past that 2.5-minute mark, so we don't know anything about his gas tank. Whereas you've got Brock Lesnar, there's only one Brock Lesnar. It's truly what it is because he's faster than any other 265-pound fighter, and he comes into fights at 280, 285 after cutting weight. So he's faster, stronger. He's got a D1 national champion wrestling base. I'm a big Lesnar fan, so I honestly think he takes this one against Carwin. I think Carwin's in for a rude awakening if he thinks he's going to do what he's done to his other opponents to Brock Lesnar. But at the same time, if anyone has a chance against Brock Lesnar right now, it is a guy like Shane Carwin that has the power in his right hand to put anyone out pretty much.
Yeah, maybe the size to keep him in front of him instead of on top of him, and if he can do that and punch him out, yeah, I'd say he's got a chance. Definitely so. Are you going to be able to join us next week?
Absolutely, guys.
Okay, well, we're going to be looking forward to that. Real quick before we go, did you get to watch the Tough from last week? What did you think about that fight? Tough 10.
That might have been one of the worst fights to ever grace that show. I mean, both guys were gassed within the first 2.5 minutes of that fight. McSweeney did a good job of working the leg kicks, and Shivers was unable to really do anything from there. I mean, he was really hurt from those leg kicks from what Zach Jensen told me after the show.